Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about some of the books that I've collected and it's just a small sample, but today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the books that I think you should have in your library as an art teacher. Having resources and being able to find good material on the visual arts and visual art education specifically has been a challenge for me, and I've noticed that there isn't a lot out there. Recently, I would say maybe in the last 10-15 years, people have really began to improve on that. So there are some good art materials out there, but you kind of have to figure out some things. So I came up with a simple list of some of the books I have, and this will really be more than I guess a part one. Hopefully I'll be able to do it again, but we're going to look at some books right now that I think you should really look at as an art educator, or and at least have in your library. Let's go at it. So here we go. So this is a pile of books that I have, and I'm going to put them in some kind of order now so we can begin to talk a little bit about what kind of books you really should have in your library as an art teacher. And let me do one at a time. And I'm going to go through these really quickly. It won't be a long, let's say, a long commentary on these each, because there's so many books. But these are a few that I have that that I think are really important to have in your library. So the first book is The Art and the Creation of Mind by Elliot W. Eisner. Now, before I get into it really quick, Eisner was really an important, if not, I think if you're definitely going to be an art teacher, Eisner has to be in your library. You should have one or two, or if possible, everything that Eisner has ever written on art education, because he was really, truly a great pioneer. And as you can see from my copy of this book, I have taken notes, lined up sections in the book that really are just wonderful. And you know, from the preface, I mean, the book really details with, Eisner really writes in a way that also is easy to read, you know, and not too academic in terms of very high academic language, but really practical. And also, even though he does discuss theory and various concepts, it's still very readable. And it's a really an engrossing book, and it's a book that's really going to give you a foundation. And he covers a lot of various points here. He talks about what a teacher should know, an art teacher should know. I mean, if you look at the table of contents, the vision and versions of art education out there, he discusses what the arts teach and how it shows it, describing learning in the visual arts, the centrality of curriculum and the function of standards. And it's one of these books that I tend to always buy and give to my friends in the art world. And if you don't have this book, I would highly advise you to get it. And I'm going to also put the link below so you can get a hold of it at Amazon, because it's really just a great book, and you should have it. The next book is also by Eisner, and it's the book The Kind of Schools We Need, Personal Essays. And Eisner here again discusses, well, he discusses his own journey and experiences in art education. But this is a great book, because he really discusses what teachers go through, and what are some of the challenges, and what are some of the things we should know. And as you can see, again, I've kind of taken the liberty of putting tags and notes to go back. I've used this book a number of times with the art and the creation of mind to do not only my own personal studies and understanding in art education, but also for my research papers, for anything that I've had to write in a very formal academic way. He's just an A1 resource. And like I said, Eisner was a real pioneer of art education. And if you don't know about him, please look him up because you'd be fascinated by him. He's wonderful. Another book that I have, and this is by Nancy Beal, and the book is The Art of Teaching Art to Children in School and at Home. And it's just a really wonderful book that deals with, the whole process of, collage, drawing, painting, clay, printmaking, construction. She gives consideration to the responsibilities that a teacher has, and what's great about it is that she discusses each of the various mediums and how to teach them. And some of it is primarily for elementary, but I would say for anyone who's in doing any of the other grades, I think this book is just as effective because it really does help you as a teacher figure out ways to kind of find out for yourself what would be best in terms of how to approach a material, how to teach it. So she shares her experiences. She basically writes about also all the various types of questions and inferences and all those type of things that go into making a lesson plan to teach a lesson in art. And what's great again is that she touches on all the various disciplines of art. And it's an illustrated book. It's all black. It's black and white, but it's still a great book. I highly recommend that you have this in your library, regardless of what grade you teach. And it's also a great book for those people who are homeschooling, believe it or not. And so for parents who also teach art or are interested in art or want to teach art in their homes or do projects with their kids, it's also a really great book, and I highly recommend it. Now, we've discussed in previous videos about the history of art, and there are not that many books, but I found this wonderful book called The History of Art Education, Intellectual and Social Currents in Teaching the Visual Arts by author D. Efland. Actually, this is a used book that I was able to get, and believe it or not, Amazon.com has one of the great things about Amazon.com is that you can get books used, which, of course, you can get it at a cheaper price because it's used, but also this is like a brand new book. So, and again, in this book, this particular author really gets into the whole process of how art education became an important part of education today. And he starts really from the beginning of it. He really begins with Western origins of art education in the classic era, and he goes all the way straight into the invention of common school art and, into the 18th, 19th century. And it's just again, another great book. I'm not sure if this book is in publication, but you could definitely get it used. It's worth having in your library if you're an art educator, visual arts educator, regardless of where you are and what you do. This is a real necessity to have. So I would highly recommend this book, A History of Art Education by author D. Efland. So that's another book there. Now, this book, the next book that I have is called The Art of Teaching Art, a guide for teaching and learning the foundations of drawing based on art. Now, I'm sorry, I was a little off the camera there, but what's great about this book is that even though it's specifically dealing with drawing, more or less, it is a book that really talks about how to teach it and how to, again, the approach. What is your approach as an art teacher when you're teaching the figure, and drawing? And regardless of where you are, I think it's a good book to have. It's one of the few books that really deals with the whole idea of not just the subject, which is the figure and drawing, but how do you teach something like this? So, and I think it's a good book to have. I've gone through it. I'm still kind of going through it, and it's just it has a lot of wonderful ideas how to basically break it down in terms of your approach and how you would teach it. So if you can get it, Deborah A. Rockman is the author. The Art of Teaching Art, a great book. Highly recommend that you have it in your library as an art teacher. The next, let me see, I got 3 more books to go, 4 more. This is another book, Engaging Learners Through Art Making, Choice-Based Art Education in the Classroom by Katherine D. Douglas and Diane B. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Jaquith. And it's a really good book. She's actually written there's another book that I have that goes kind of along with it. This one's Engaging Learners. This one is the Learner-Directed Classroom, Developing Creative Thinking Skills Through Art. Both these books are great, and each book deals a little differently. You know, like this book here, Engaging Learners, deals with basically the philosophy and rationale, implementation of choice-based authentic art education in elementary and middle schools. You know, again, when you go through these books, you're going to see a lot. You know, everything from how to set up your classroom to how to set up time. You know, structuring your time, student roles. Everything, practical-based theory, theory that you could put into action, actually, you know, choice-based art education, artistic behaviors, things of that nature. It's a great book. I've read it. I have to read it again because there's so much in here. It talks about exhibitions, too, how to kind of put those things together, and it's just a really good book, and it's illustrated, which is really great. A lot of pictures, and it's really well written. And, you know, you may not read the whole book, let's say, but you'll always find something interesting. And if you're an elementary school teacher, especially elementary school art teacher, this book may be very helpful because, like many of the elementary art teachers have to do, you know, help with stage design and projects like that are more geared to you know, the activities around the school. So you'll see pictures about that, you know, like shows and things, you know, and believe it or not, this book deals with some of that. So this might be very helpful to you. This book here is a little different, and it's really, it deals with the standards and based learning environment and how to really implement those things. It could be a little wordy as a book, but again, the information is pretty cool. It deals with teaching the whole child. You know, what does that mean and how do you do it? You know, advocating for student-centered art programs. And it's really about the student being the center of the program and not so much the teacher, you know. It's really allowing the student to kind of find creative ways to develop. Of course, you're making you know, you're coming up with different things that students can reflect on. And this book deals also a lot with, again, elementary, middle school. I think a little bit more with elementary. This one's more, this one's more with, this book here deals more with elementary and middle school, but this one seems to be stronger on the middle school side of it. Either way, it's still, they're both great books if you're in either category as an art teacher. And I would highly recommend it. Both books deal also with the concept of play. What does play mean in the art studio, in the art room, and how to use that as a way to create learning opportunities for the students. Now, this book is not an art book per se, But it's a nice little book that I picked up, and I found it to be very helpful in some ways and helped me think about certain things. And this book is called The New Teacher's Companion. And this one is Practical Wisdom for Succeeding in the Classroom by Gini Cunningham. And it's a nice little book. Again, bought it used. The author may not like that, but I definitely do. But you could also buy it new. And it's all about setting up your classroom, managing class time. You know, it talks about coordinating standards, curriculum, textbooks, and so on. It doesn't specifically deal with art room, but there's a lot in here that is universal to any to any teacher. So you could use that as an art teacher to better structure your classroom, how you're going to work out the various different parts of that, you know, handling discipline problems, engaging students, effective assessment practices, things of that nature. Even though the assessments will also be a little different with art, but I think you'll still find this very useful. And lastly, it's two more books, but it's by the same author, Ron Clark. Now, I think if you ever heard of Ron Clark is a teacher who is really amazing, and his material, his books, really just give you great ideas in how to deal with your classroom and how to deal with students. And you know, relationships are important in this field of art education, and dealing and having to deal with your students is really, really crucial. So Ron Clark wrote two books. One is called The Essential 55, and the second book, which I have it as a hardcover, actually this was given to me. I actually bought The Essential 55. The second one is The Excellent 11, qualities teachers and parents use to motivate, inspire, and educate children. To some degree, both books deal with the same subject, as far as, you know, motivating, finding ways to motivate students, finding, you know, it has rules that you can implement in your classroom, you know, all about behavior, all about bringing out the best in your students. This book particularly became a bestseller in the New York Times bestseller list. Ron Clark is extremely articulate, bright, you know, just a great teacher, a great mentor if you can really get a hold of all the things he has to offer. Again, it's not specifically to art teachers in the traditional sense, but these are books also that help you think about how you conduct yourself and how you teach in your classroom. So I think these are books that you should try to get, and they'll be helpful to your growth. So that is it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and look at the links below. I may put this list of books, and you can get most of them, if not all of them, through Amazon.com. So until next time, take care, and remember to subscribe. Thank you.